Okay, welcome back. We are gonna do some more math problems, and this is from 4.3 RSG, and we're gonna do 13 through 15, which is where they're just asking you to find the x and the y intercept. Okay, and so let's do definitions. So the x intercept, let me write this over here. Let's put this in, get bigger. So the x intercepts, like graph wise, is the point where the function crosses the x axis. Okay. Algebra wise, it means, so algebraically, is when y equals 0. Okay, so you have to get this in your head. So x-intercept is the point where the function crosses the x-axis. Algebraically, it's when the y equals 0. So some people think that this doesn't make sense. Like, shouldn't it be like that the x is equal to 0? Actually, no, it doesn't. Now, let me show you why. So keep this in mind while I go down here. So if I look at the x-axis, right? If I look at this x-axis, right? And I'm looking for the x-intercept. It's clearly right here. So you're like, oh, okay. So if it's right there, Miss Johnson, what point is that? So let's look at what point is that. So that point right there is 3 comma 0. Okay. It's 3 comma 0. So I'm going to write that down. It's 3 comma 0. And I just looked at the graph and boom, it's right there. So I know that this is the x-intercept because it's on the x-axis. If you know anything about the x-axis, you would know there's a pattern to every single point that lives on the x-axis. Okay. And so I'm not going to point out that pattern. Maybe you'll see it in a little bit, and maybe someone told you. Actually, I just did. So here, over here, what's the x-intercept for this graph? What would the x-intercept be for this graph right here? What do you think? Yeah. Sorry, not the y-intercept. You're telling me the y-intercept.
The y value is always 0.
Yeah, the y value is always 0, but what is that point? Tell me what I put right here. What comma what? What would that be? What do you think?
It's a little hard to see on my end, but is that 3?
Yeah, it's negative 3 comma 0. Very good. So it's negative 3 comma 0. So you guys can already see kind of like that pattern growing where it could be any number along here, but your y is always going to be 0. And I actually mentioned that earlier, and now you see why that's true. Does that make sense? So that's how you find your x-intercept on graphs. But how would you find it on a table? So this is what this part is asking. My mouse isn't listening to me. There you go. So if I give you a table, this is still true, right? It's the point where the function crosses the x-axis, or algebraically, it's when y equals to 0, right? When is y equals to 0? And you're like, y equals to 0. Oh, it's right here. It's when it's 2 comma 0. So I'm going to write the point 2 comma 0 because that's your y-intercept. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. So now, ow, shoulder hurting. Similarly, if I wanted to talk about the y-intercept, something's happening. It's not letting me type. All right, let me try this. All right, let's try that. There it is. You're gonna let me type? Oh yeah. So similarly, instead of the x-intercept, I'm gonna be talking about the y-intercept. Is the point where the function crosses the x-axis? No, the y-axis, right? Algebraically is when y equals to 0? No, when x equals to 0. Okay. That makes sense? Okay. Thank you for letting me know, hon. Okay, so then let's go here to the graph because I always like looking at graphs first because graphs, my I don't know. My thing for you all is if you can think about it graphically, you have a better picture in your head what we're actually doing. Okay, so where is the y-intercept? And then we said, oh, it's where the function crosses your y-axis. It's where your function crosses your y-axis, right? So it's right there. So what is that point? What is that point? What do you guys think? Almost 0, 10. The 10 is actually this guy up here. So it's 0, 9. Very good. 0, 9. 0, 9. So, but it's true, right? Like the x is a 0. So going over here, you already told us what this was earlier. I should have wrote it down, but now it's making a little bit more sense why it's 0, 4, right? 0, 4. And if you can imagine like taking this line and moving it up and down on this y-axis, this number right here would just change. It would go 5, 6, 7, and so on. But the 0 would stay exactly the same, okay? So if you're looking for your y-intercept, you want x to be 0. So then from the table, we're just looking for the same thing. So can you look at this and tell me if you see the, let's see, we're looking for the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept for this one? What's the y-intercept in this table? What do you think? Yeah, what am I looking for? I'm looking
0,
for
4?
Yeah, it's 0, 4 because I was looking for, I want x to be 0. So you're not 0, you're not 0, you're not 0. Oh, you're 0, 0, 4. Okay, so write down 0, 4. So this is how you find intercepts on a table and on a graph and why that's true, right? Go back to the definition. I'm going to encourage you to do two things. Number one, go back to the definition. And if you can come up with a picture for it, that's really strong. Okay. So thank you for listening.